Alright, let's see if this will work. Ah, yes. Okay, there we go. There we go. That should be just dandy. Alright. Greetings and hello, everybody. I'm Kaiser Louis Philip V, coming to you today with another mobile vlog. If you hear some chanting in the background, you are not crazy. I am listening to some Benedictine plain song from France, actually. I don't have the CD with me. It was in another CD case. You know how that is when you're between CDs a lot and you end up kind of going back and forth on your music. But I am listening to it, so if you do hear it, that is intentional. I just hope it's not too loud. And I wanted to talk today about, as I'm driving again, back and forth between home and my college. I went home this weekend because my laundry got just a bit out of control, and the laundry machines are not really that good for big loads at campus, and they don't really wash that well, for that matter, the more clothes you put in. So honestly, I decided I was going to come home and I was going to use my good laundry machine at home, my good dryer, and do my laundry, and stay for a day or two for the weekend, and come home, and go home like where I live now, which is what I'm doing. And what I wanted to talk about today was something I got from a Facebook page called Defeat Modernism, and it's something I've seen before, which was St. Pius V talking about homosexuals in the clergy needing to be deprived of their office and handed over to the civil authorities, and by extension of that, put to death. Now, I don't see a problem with this, and I know that's shocking, but I don't see a problem with this. But I do see a problem with where it's going to lead. Now let me explain that. I respect traditionalists that I meet, real traditionalists that I meet, but I do have to say one thing about you guys. Some of you guys are surprisingly bloodthirsty motherfuckers. Pardon my French, but damn. Some of you guys, very few of you that I've met are actually military veterans. Unfortunately, veterans kind of get sucked up into fascism with the Tea Party. But most of you are really bloodthirsty. And I can respect that in a sense that, you know, you feel like you need to do the butcher's work to get the job done, you know, and you're willing to do that. I respect that, you know, initial willingness. I do respect that. But the problem is, you know, I really do respect people like George Patton and Alexander the Great, but if you asked me to make them, you know, leaders of nations and not generals, I would have to disagree, because those kind of guys don't do well in a national position where you have to be very level-headed and you have to sometimes make difficult decisions that aren't necessarily satisfying, but they're the right ones to make. So with traditionalism and its violent undercurrent, it has to be channeled properly, otherwise it's going to resort to mob violence. And specifically what I'm worried about with this decree on Pius V I see floating around is, let's be real, people. We lost, thanks to the conciliar church's manhandling of the subject, and its, you know, already existing effeteness, it has lost the war for marriage. And we have lost the war for marriage. We have lost the war against abortion. We've completely lost it. It's over. You've lost. You need to accept you lost. You know, forget it. I'm not saying forget the fight. What I'm saying is, this current strategy, you have lost. You are defeated. Okay? Every state that has not accepted gay marriage is either surrounded by states that do, or they don't matter in the electoral scheme of things. So, congratulations. You know, you totally bumfucked it. If that was your goal, you did it right. If that was not your goal, well, you really should have done something different than what was obviously not working. Now, on the subject of that, what scares me about this is that mostly what really scared me about it was my godfather and family came over to visit while I was back in town to see me, and I was talking to my godfather, and he said there have been reports of hangings in Mississippi. Not just any hangings. The KKK is stringing up black people. They found a black man strung up in the woods on a tree, and the primary, everything seems to point to it was a Klan hanging. This may be, as far as I'm aware, the first Klan hanging in the South since the Civil Rights era. That's bad, guys. That's really bad. And I've already talked about what the inevitability of racial politics, as I discussed before, is going to lead to. You're going to have this behavior. It's going to happen. It should be put down, but you can't fix a problem like that without going at the source. You have to deal with the attitudes of everyone involved, and you have to reform them in such a way that, you know, they don't do this, or you have to take away their points of, like, where they're able to speak about this. You have to take away their ability to talk about it. You have to invalidate them and discredit them. Or, if worse comes to worse, you have to kill them. You have to get rid of them. You have to get rid of these people who are advocating racial violence. Now, I don't know the surrounding, some of you may say who are a bit edgier, that I don't know what's surrounding this hanging, that I don't know. Maybe he actually did something. Maybe he did actually rape a white woman. Maybe he did actually do something wrong and justice was not done. Well, in response to that, I don't really give a shit. I'll honestly be surprised if he actually did do something and the police looked the other way. I will be surprised. However, given the record of the Ku Klux Klan and their marvelous judiciary capability, I'm going to lean on the side that I'm going to lean more towards the fact that probably his offense was he was a black man and he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and as such found himself on the wrong end of a noose. I didn't have time to corroborate his story, but the idea that either this has been threatened or that it has actually happened scares me. And what scares me more is that I also heard recently that there was an instance where a man shot a little black girl from his home in a neighborhood, and Nazi memorabilia was found in his house. Now, but this didn't make national news at the time. What's made national news are these really ambiguous cases, like Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, you know, all these other things that are really, you know, really nebulous, you know, that can be construed either way. And this is not good. Someone is manipulating things in such a way that there can be these these ambiguous points of contention, and violence can pop off. And what's scaring me is that the same thing could happen in regards to homosexuality. The same exact thing could happen. And I can see it now, actually. I can see some man who, you know, killed a homosexual, you know, his house being raided, and God forbid they find a bunch of Templar and Crusader shit, and they find all this Catholic stuff, and he tells people the reason he killed this guy is because he's a homosexual, and St. Pius V said to do it. We don't need that shit, people. We don't need that shit right now, okay? Because we have a pope who I feel like would decanonize and suppress Pius V's cult if such a thing happened. I would be absolutely horrified if that happened, because not only was it a grave injustice, but the ramifications are going to be staggering. And we don't need that shit, okay? We really don't. What scares me is you have these people who run pages like Defeat Modernism or Earl of Grey or other people who don't understand that for some people, their page is the only place where their political beliefs get any clout, get talked about, get represented. They don't seem to understand that, or they don't seem to care about that. And that really does bug me. Because what that means is, like, Earl of Grey, I heard it from his own mouth. Earl of Grey has become a fascist. He is now a fascist, probably soft Nazi. I mean, I heard it from him himself. If people really want, I will go into my messenger and I will find the messages where he tells me why he's a fascist, and I respond to his reasoning and try to correct him, but he didn't listen. I will show people those screenshots if they really want to see them. You know, I'm not worried about any ramifications of this. You know, I've been threatened by fascists numerous times. You know what I see? I see a bunch of cowards. I see a bunch of chicken shits. They hide behind fake Facebook profiles. They hide behind fake aliases. They don't hide who they are. I am who I say I am. It is not hard to find me on the internet, okay? I put my face out here. I put my voice out here. You've seen where I'm driving. You see the car I'm driving. That's enough for somebody who's clever. You see where I'm driving. You can estimate based on these videos how long it takes me to get from point A to point B. That's all you need to find me if you really want to find me. That's all you need. If you're good enough to try to square up to me in the first place. that's all you really need. And so, I'm not afraid of what I say. I'm not afraid of the ramifications of it. I'm prepared to pay the price for trying to, teach Catholicism and restore Christendom. I am fully prepared to accept the consequences of this because I know it's the right thing to do, and I'm not ashamed to suffer for a good cause. I am not ashamed at all to do that. But back on subject, really, I'm really concerned that, these pages, they put things up like this, and they don't take the time to clarify that we shouldn't just go out and kill gay people. In fact, in the subtext, they seem to be saying that's the solution to this. Now, here's the problem, okay? I'm going to start with just Pope St. Pius V's declaration, but first of all, I'm going to put you in the environment where this is going on, okay? It's the Protestant Reformation, immorality on a social level that is affecting the whole of society, not people's personal decisions. Stuff that is affecting the whole of society is happening. Stuff that's affecting Catholics is happening. This is a dark time, the walls, the Catholic world is becoming smaller. It's becoming fragmented. That is the Christendom over which Pope Pius V is, pontificating. That's the world he's dealing with. Now, in the medieval world and in the ancient world, particularly in Greece and Rome, homosexuality was synonymous with pedophilia. It was synonymous with with pederasty and this kind of behavior. Homosexuality was extremely prevalent in Europe before Christianity. Among the Celts and the Gaels, for one thing, it was very prevalent. The Romans write about it a lot. There's huge records of it. In fact, homosexuality in pagan Ireland is actually somewhat fascinating if you care to look into that sort of thing. There was in all these homosexual, cultures almost, pedophilia was closely aligned with that. Non-consensual relationships were closely aligned with that. In some societies in the ancient world, particularly the Eastern Roman, I believe, and in Greece, a man would sodomize his slaves or his social inferiors to display his dominance. I'm not joking. You would have guys, in a bathhouse, if they saw a peasant or something, there were a bunch of, senators or whatever, they'd sodomize him. They would rape him, because it was a display of dominance. It was a display of exertion, of power and authority, It was for some, Scandinavians, for Germanics, you would sodomize prisoners of war because it was a sign of dominance. You were humiliating and demasculinating your opponent. This was the homosexuality that the medieval world was familiar with. This was the homosexuality that they knew. Okay, they didn't know about the nice guy, who's very, fashionable and, has a lisp and goes around, he's not really a bad guy. He's eccentric, but, he is gay. He's eccentric, that's not the homosexuality that the medieval world knew. The medieval world knew a much more brutal kind of, homosexuality, where sodomy was pretty much what was going on. People were sodomizing each other. They were raping each other. They were, shaming each other because it was dominance. It was exerting force, A lot of barbarians did the same things to women. It was to insult the people they had conquered. It was, it was pure domination. It was, let's give these women some real men. That's what that kind of barbaric attitude, homosexuality and other things, was associated with in the ancient world and in the early medieval world. This was what the Catholic Church was combating. Okay, it was not nearly the same thing as you would see among most homosexuals today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think most homosexuals sodomize their social inferiors to get a point across. And I hope they don't. I hope they don't start either. Because we're going to have some problems. So, that's the kind of homosexuality that Pope Pius V, St. Pius V was familiar with. That's the kind almost everybody in his immediate, world was familiar with. That's what it was. So when he's writing this encyclical talking about homosexual priests, he's specifically addressing pedophilia. Now, I know you can say, oh, pedophilia has always been a problem with the Catholic Church, huh? And I'm like, well, it's more like it's always a problem in any profession where you have, a profession where you're in contact with small children. It's the nature of anything. A good example, I suppose, education. Every profession has its dark side. Every profession has its negative and positive attributes. There is almost no wholly perfect thing in this world, people. It doesn't exist this side of paradise. And that's just a fact. Now, talking, on the subject of what Pius V was, interacting with and dealing with, and why he cared so much about it. In the medieval mindset, the worst thing you can do is kill the soul, okay? Your soul is your first, last, and only possession that you can truly lay claim to for your entire life. That is your will. That is your spirit. That is yours, wholly and truly yours, and no one can take that from you. If your life was shit and you spent your whole life taking shit from people and getting the short end of the stick, but you kept your soul and you won heaven, congratulations, your life was a success. If you were a conqueror, a powerful man, wealthy, influential, got everything you ever wanted in life, successful, roundly, but you lost your soul, then you were nothing. So the beggar man, covered in boils, is above, in some respects at least, the spiritual one at least, is above Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and, other people, Frederick II or III, the Holy Roman Emperor, they called the wonder of the world, who was excommunicated or was in trouble a lot with the papacy. He is beneath the disease-ridden beggar man who has kept his faith and has attained heaven. He has won the good race. That, I think, is the power of Catholicism, that no matter what, if you maintain and persevere, you will win. I think that's the most important lesson that Catholicism can teach anybody if it's not a purely religious one. If you stay the course and persevere, you will be victorious. And that's a lesson I've taken with me ever since I became Catholic throughout my whole life. So why is Pius V, again, what does that have to do with Pius V being such a hardliner against clergymen? I'm going to emphasize, clergymen, priests, people who are under the direct authority of the Roman Pontiff. Why does he want to put people among that are homosexual to death? Well, first off, we have to say, well, is he really putting people who are just gay to death, or is it people who struggle with the vice, or are we talking about active homosexuals? Well, the only people who ever got burned at the stake were active heretics who did not repent and actively sought to dissuade people from Catholicism or from its truths. Those were the only people who got put to the stake and burned. So I think we would have to safely assume that the same logic would apply judiciarily. I don't think it's a word, but I'm going to make it up anyway. I don't think in a judiciary sense, it would be much different for homosexuals. If you have sodomized someone, you are probably going to die. Because, even if it's a consensual thing, you're probably going to die. Because here's the thing about priests, okay? A priest is the guy who guides and protects a person's soul, okay? A priest in the medieval world, and even among Catholics, has more influence over people than almost anything else in their lives. So, if a priest, of all people, in the most sacred callings in the world, if a priest, a clergyman, leads someone into an act that is sinful and taints their soul, that is unexcusable, unforgivable, and absolutely meriting punishment. It absolutely mandates justice, because it mandates an example. Because you can't just, as a priest, lead someone into sin. You can't abuse people and not be subject to the law. A priest is and should be subject to the highest standards of conduct, because he has so much responsibility. To whom much is given, much is required. And to a priest, much is given. And as such, even more is required. Those graces, that spiritual authority, that's a huge burden. That's a huge task. One that you willingly have chosen. And to not fulfill it is tantamount to sacrilege and blasphemy. Because by your actions, you could scandalize faithful, and you could lose, you could lose souls, never recoverable again souls. That's a tragedy in the greatest sense, because now, no matter what they do with their lives, if they've lost their souls, it amounted to nothing. Eternity will far outweigh the temporal. All is vanity, all is dust. That is a huge thing to consider when you're looking at this. You can't just look at it and say, oh, the Pope wants to kill priests who are gay, how intolerant, how bigoted. You have to understand, people, religion is not something that is up for debate. It's not something that's up for discussion. Theology is a science, okay? It was the queen of the sciences. To study the heavens, to study the divine is the highest thing in the world that a man can do. It was the same way with philosophy in the ancient world. It was the king of the sciences. Now theology is the queen of the sciences. So you can't just, act like this is something we can just sweep away, that we can just ignore, that we can just not talk about. Because when you fail to understand and grasp the fact that religion for the ancient peoples and for the medieval peoples and for our ancestors was such a serious matter, was such a serious topic, to ignore that is to completely and absolutely ignore and fail to understand why so many things were the way they were in the ancient world, in Christendom. It's, I'm not, and most, of the Catholic history would not advocate the simple killing of homosexuals. And even then, I believe, again, because we're talking about how other judiciary cases are handled, if we're talking about people who are gay, who are homosexual, I believe that in the historical context and in the text, from my understanding and from my reading of other similar cases in the period, and understanding how the laws function, a homosexual would be considered someone who was actively engaging in homosexual acts. It wouldn't be just someone with a gay orientation. It would be someone who is actively engaging in homosexual acts and leading people into that lifestyle. That I would believe you could classify as a homosexual. Just like you can only classify someone as being a murderer if they've actually murdered someone. You could say someone's homicidal, but how do you know if they've never committed homicide? So you see, these are important questions to ask to understand all of this. These are important things to know so that A, we don't let people just lambast our religion over something we didn't do, and B, we can't let people who are radicals, Savonarolas, start saying we should string up and burn gay people to our detriment. That's not going to affect anything. That's not going to change anything for the better. It's not a just fight. It won't change anything to just go out and start killing gay people. What's going to happen is you're going to be slaughtered to the last man. Your children will be taken away from you, and they'll grow up to hate you. Our religion will be suppressed, and all throughout history books for the next 500 years, people will hear about how Catholics were the enemies of good peace and good order, and the enemies of homosexuals, to the point where, it wasn't just people who had gay orientations and tendencies, it was people who were gay. That's bad, okay? That's not something we want to happen. We don't want that to occur. We can't let that occur, because if we do, then we fail. This is not a time to be doing stupid shit. This is not a time to be goofing around. This is a time to get serious, and this is a time to start looking at strategies that will win. This is the time to start putting our heads together and learning our history and using it as a roadmap to figure out where we need to go from here. Because we're just driving all over the road we're just driving all throughout the wilderness, wandering in the desert, not getting anywhere, instead of finding a road and sticking to it and reading our map and following it. That's a big mistake that we're making right now. That's what you can sum up Vatican II as. If you can sum up the post-Vatican II church as wandering in the wilderness when we could just as easily stick to the roads that have been laid out before us and do just fine. This has to be fixed. And understanding issues like this in a proper context and proper understanding is absolutely key to it. This is why, as part of my projects with the NSIR, I want to establish an imperial inquisition. I want a group of learned, educated scholars, canon lawyers, theologians, lawyers who understand, historians who understand this stuff and who read it and who make it their life's work. And I want them so that we can educate people, we can analyze spiritual phenomena, we can, supernatural, experts, parapsychologists, whatever, people who understand this stuff and can analyze it and can proofread it and can, help guide us in properly understanding these kind of things and in properly teaching these kind of things and in properly walking in the way we should go. There's a favorite quote of mine by Blessed Charlemagne, right action is better than right knowledge. But in order to do what is right, we must know what is right. And you know what? That's one of the only surviving quotes from the mouth of Charlemagne that exist. Almost everything else is hearsay. If I remember correctly, this was written or said expressly by him. To me, the man who united Europe under Catholicism and who bore forth the first sign of Christendom unto the world in a post-Roman world, the fact that that is the quote that comes from him is damn near prophetic. It's a damn near religious sign. It almost is. Because it's saying, if you want to do the right thing, if you want to be triumphant, if you want to be successful, you need to do it. But you have to have the right knowledge to be able to do that. But to just have the knowledge is not enough. You have to act on it. You can't just know what is right. You have to do what's right. To me, that is extremely important to any Catholic and to any person who fancies himself an imperialist or as someone who wants to restore Christendom, as a counter-revolutionary, as a restorationist, whatever. It's incredibly important that you understand and remember and meditate on that quote. And in closing, this quote, this thing, it's not about just killing gay people. It's another example of how Christendom puts the salvation of souls as a very important thing. It's another example of how the Catholic Church, has changed, has really lost sight of what's important, And this kind of goes into, this whole debate that's been raging recently about capital punishment. I've leaked things from 1 Peter 5 on the subject about how, this whole thing of being against capital punishment is absurd considering the other problems we're facing right now in the Christian world, when it's something that has been settled. It's been done. Pope Francis cannot change how the Catholic Church teaches on capital punishment. He can't do it. I'm sorry. I really hate to disappoint you, but it can't be done. This religion is 2,000 years old, people. Nothing new is under the sun. We have existed longer than any other institution almost in the world, We are the last, think about this, we're the last surviving institution in the Western world that predates or dates back to Rome. Think about that. And if we go even further back to the predecessors of the Catholic religion, the old ancient Hebrew religion, we predate the Persians. We predate, the Babylonians. This is an old religion, an old philosophy, an old system of belief that has weathered almost everything you can put humanity through. And you really think you're going to tell us how we should do things? You really think we haven't thought of something yet? I mean, if you don't think we haven't thought about an answer to something yet, we have either somehow not encountered it yet, or you just are not looking hard enough. You're not praying about it enough, you're not meditating on it enough, and you're not searching enough. A pearl of great price is worth searching for, if you ask me on the subject. And, well, I don't think I'm even halfway to my destination. I may be about halfway. I really don't know. But I think that's all I have to say, on the subject of, all of that I just discussed. The one thing I do want to talk about is the lack of content on the pages. I'm sorry. I'm waiting on some commissions that have not yet been finished, that are not yet done. They should be done, I expect, before the end of this upcoming week. They should be finished before then. I've been reading a lot, and I've been kind of going through and learning about some more regions of Christendom that I was previously not very knowledgeable on, particularly Italy, the Italian city-states, which is a real political hotbed. You gotta watch where you step. I'm looking into the Savoyards right now, and for historic conquered roads, those kind of people. I'm really looking into that. Learned a bit more about the Austrian side of things and other things. But I'm really trying to expand my purview on things that relate to Catholicism and spheres of Christendom, because I want to be able to touch everybody and everything. Because it's not just about one nationality; it's about all of us. Catholicism, Christendom should and can supersede any national boundary, any racial boundary. And I was reading an article about that too. We are witnessing today the rise of non-states like ISIS. And everything we've tried to do, from a national state perspective, has not hindered them. And someone commented on, and I'll put this article up later, that basically we're witnessing the rise of an entity that supersedes the nation, which is ideology, religion, beliefs. Hilaire Belloc said religion is a stronger bind than any language, ethnicity, or anything. Religion binds a common set of ideas that everyone shares, is more precious than any purity of blood. It's far more precious than blood. And that's why I believe in the inherent superiority of Christendom, Roman Christendom, and all these other things. Because when you have a set of ideas that everyone, no matter their ethnicity or whatever, agrees on, you have something very powerful. You have something that can move mountains, that can do anything. And, I think that's all I really have to talk about in closing before I start rambling. So that's all for now, you guys. Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, like, subscribe, check out all of our pages. Google us, Novum Sacrum Imperium Romanum, see what comes up. We should be showing up. Tell your friends, share our content across all our pages. If you want to write, if you want to draw, if you want to admin, if you want to start local chapters, please talk to me. Please let me know, and I will get with you. I will talk to you, and we will work something out. I need people who are dedicated. I don't need flakes. I need people who are in this for the long haul. So, without further ado, God love you.